Hello, everybody, and welcome to this. It's an interview with Martin Seligman, and we are doing this as part of the Strategies to Thrive. We welcome you so much, and we're so honored and delighted to have Marty here with us. This is about being an interactive webinar, so we will ask you to ask questions, and then we will promote you to a panelist so that you can ask Marty your question over video and in person. So please put your questions in at any point. And now we welcome Marty. Hello, Marty.
Hi, I'm happy to be here, and I'll tell you in a couple of minutes why it's important that I'm happy to be here.
Marty, why don't you start with that?
Okay, well, I've been thinking about the literature on positive psychology and its relationship to infectious illness, wound healing, and then to resilience. And many of you will recall the work of Sheldon Cohn on infectious illness. So he looks at who gets a cold when he injects rhinovirus into the nose of people. And he isolates them and basically found that people who are high positive affective, that is merry, cheerful, smiling a lot, only got the cold 25% of the time, but people who were low positive affective got the cold 75% of the time. So this suggests that from a point of view of an infectious illness, what all of you should be doing right now is having fun, being cheerful and merry during this time. And that's very different from what we usually talk about in positive psychology. So I don't think Emily's on the call yet, but Emily had an article in the New York Times today on the importance of meaning, the non-positive affective variables for the pandemic. So I believe that optimism, meaning, and those variables will be very important for recovery and resilience. But the only evidence we have on actually infection suggests that it's positive affectivity and being merry and happy. Now, for someone, as you know, who's like me, in the bottom half of positive affectivity, seeing Senia's face and seeing all of you here is something that makes me happy. So I'm trying to maximize the amount of fun, happiness, positive affect that I'm having during this period. So I'm one of those high optimism, low positive affectivity people.
So what are you specifically doing to be especially happy and merry these days?
Well, Mandy did a great thing when we've been isolating for about a month. And for about a year, we've been talking about getting a puppy. And we have such a heavy travel and speaking schedule that the notion of trying to housebreak a puppy and being with them during their puppyhood was impossible. But Mandy a month ago said, okay, we're going into isolation, let's get a puppy. So now we've got 4 dogs in the house, one of which is a 10-week-old Bernedoodle. And puppies really bring a lot of joy. So I recommend puppies to all of you.
So Marty's advice to all of us is everyone go out and get a puppy.
Get a puppy. Yeah. But more than that, one of the, it's just a hypothesis, but from the Sheldon Cohn's infectious illness literature, the best guess is that the merrier, more cheerful, the better time you're having now during isolation, the more you may ward this off. So I'm suggesting puppies, good food, dancing, sex, making love, all the things that make you happy. The more of that, the better. Funny movies and the like. So it's just a guess. Optimism, meaning, and is going to be important at the end of this. As Abraham Lincoln says all the time, this too will pass. When it passes, hope and optimism and meaning are going to be the variables that'll allow us to pick up the pieces and go on, I think.
So it sounds like you're saying in the short term, happy and merry, and down the road, keep up the optimism and the meaning.
Yeah, and happy and merry for the the 50% of Mapsters who, like me, are low positive affective, happy and merry is not easy to achieve. So you really have to work on the things that make you happy. So by chance, last fall, I planted 3,000 spring bulbs. And right now, this enormous number of daffodils, tulips, hyacinths are coming up. And as soon as I go out of the house, I'm greeted by this audience of daffodils. And that just makes me happy. So I've rarely advocated happiness in my life per se, but right now I'm advocating it. The more puppies, the better. The more good food, the better. The more love, the better.
That is a very clear takeaway from this call. Go do it.
And the more I hang out with Mapsters, which is the most intellectual fun, literally fun that I have, the better. But I'm doing more teaching now with Mapsters and undergraduates than I've done in this time period before. So I'm on sabbatical, but I'm cramming in lots of things like what we're doing now.
I'm going to ask a question, and then we already have two coming up from the audience. So here's my question first. Speaking of Mapsters, you have founded and launched this MAPP program that so many of us on the call know about, and you've set forth into the world about 500 alums of the program. It's almost like we've been trained for exactly this kind of thing, helping people with what you've just mentioned, merriness, happiness, down the road, optimism, meaning. What do you most hope that MAPP alums will be doing in this time?
Well, it is remarkable, but we of course never anticipated that we'd be doing these things in isolation. So much of what we've done has been relationships and dealing with other people. So a lot of the question is how the virtual environment affects us. So I think there are two things I'd say. First, for many of us, isolating are dealing with fragile people, and fragile people in our family, virtually dealing with friends. So I think we know a little bit about what's important for fragile people at this point. And that is there are about a half a dozen positive psychology exercises that we can do with fragile people, which probably fight depression and anxiety. So putting it in perspective, positive introduction, active constructive, using your signature strengths more. Three blessings are all examples of positive exercises that you should be doing not only with non-fragile people, but very importantly with fragile people. And then there's the question of Mapsters in the world dealing. And again, I think virtually we should be doing these exercises with people. We should be forming groups in which we do exercises like this. And then I want to add to that where I started, and that was that my hunch is that happiness and fun right now are important, and they may actually fight the probability of infection. And so thinking of all the things, and you'll be better at this than I am for the most part, that bring you joy and fun and neck down positive emotion should be things that we're doing. And as so many of you said over the years, more than half of positive psychology is neck down. And so I want you neck down people to get into action.
You heard it here in 2020. Marty is telling all the neck down people, all the people who are adding vitality and health to PERMA, this is your time. This is get happy and merry from the neck down as well.
And teach others how to do neck down. So on a call, a couple of calls ago, there are people who are doing dancing virtually. And that's a great neck down thing. So this is a time to get creative about neck down joy and neck up joy.
I'm so glad you're saying that, because in addition to working remotely, working from home, a lot of us are educating from home. Now, you and Mandy have homeschooled your kids a lot of the time, But now with these online remote programs, they are offering English, they're offering math, but a lot of times they're not quite offering physical education or dance. So what you're saying, it's not only for us working people, but for us as parents too.
Yeah, I just heard about online gymnastics. So it's doable, and we should be using our imagination about it. It's also one of the possible benefits here that many times we've talked about the insidious uh, and negative aspects of media and online stuff. And this, I think, is going to be a time at which we see the media taking positive roles. So this may be turnaround. This may be a turnaround from depressing anti-social media to pro-social positive media.
That actually brings us to a question. This person asked, and this person actually asked that this question is read out loud. So the question is, this coronavirus crisis is also a mental health crisis. What are your top 3 interventions for stressed frontline healthcare workers that they can do right now to mitigate stress? Maybe something to complement the wash your hands for 20 seconds messaging.
Yeah, I see on the chat line that Amanda Moffa is on it, and Amanda is heading a neck down committee, neck down joy committee. So I urge those of you who can see the chat and are interested in thinking up new ways to do neck down to contact Amanda. Now the question that Senia proposes is, how about anxiety and depression and panic? And what do we know about those things? And there are a couple of interventions that we know are reliable for anxiety. One is the relaxation meditations. So this is a time for the breathing meditation, the relaxation meditation. Now, there are also some other anti-anxiety things that may work well. So putting it in perspective, I think is important here, that just to review that, we're naturally attracted to the most catastrophic interpretation of what's going on. So as a catastrophizer, the immediate reaction I have when I look at the death rate and that it's people in their 70s who are dying at a great rate, I think this is going to kill me. That's the most catastrophic reaction. And then I do put it in perspective. Okay, well, the worst possible thing is that my whole family is going to get sick, and Mandy and I, being the oldsters, are going to die. That's the worst thing. The best thing is, well, we're isolating perfectly well, and we're really careful about that, so no one's going to get sick at all, and we will pass through this unscathed. Okay, what's the most likely thing? Well, the most likely thing is probably not in the next month, because we're careful about this and we're not going out, will we get ill, but this is going to come in waves, and Mandy and I will probably both get this in the next year, and we probably won't make it without unscathed until the vaccine, but by that time, we'll probably get it in small doses, and the medical system will not be overwhelmed, and statistically, it's not going to kill us, but it's going to make us uncomfortable and moderately ill for 10 days to 2 weeks. So that's the put it in perspective exercise that I think is an anxiety reliever. What's the worst thing? What's the best thing? What's the most likely thing? And then how to plan for the most likely.
So you suggest this for those right at the front lines as well, the healthcare
Oh, yeah,
workers.
yeah. So our frontline nurses, and I've been in touch with my friend Jim Palmer. Jim is the leading Penn surgeon for sinus infection. And he's been telling me about the infection rate for his nurses and across the world for ENT people. And you all remember the ophthalmologist in Wuhan who died early. So Jim's view of this is, and he's completely stopped doing surgery, because his view is that what happened surgically and what's happening with nurses and doctors is they're being exposed to massive doses of the virus. And there really is a dose response curve here. And to the extent you're only exposed to small amounts, your immune system can cope with it. So protective devices has been important for nurses and doctors. And Jim immediately, starting March 1st, has been advising ENT people to do no surgery at all on coronavirus cases.
Very useful. We are about to promote somebody to a panelist, and that's going to be Angie Shearer. She will ask you a question live. And as she's being promoted to a panelist, I will also share with you what somebody else said. Kathy Norman wrote to you in the questions section. Marty, you are MAPPster's positive intervention. So you're saying do ACR and so on. One person thinks do more Marty. Watch Marty's webinars.
Hi, Angie.
Hi, here's Angie.
You're muted now, so turn off your muting if you can, or someone should turn off. Yeah, good. Oh, you were unmuted momentarily. Okay, you're there, unmuted.
Yeah. Hi, Marty. I'm lovely to meet you. I've been looking into positive psychology for the past year or so, and like you guys have said, now more than ever, we kind of really need these interventions. For the people across the world, what would you say would be your top pieces of advice or top positive psychology interventions that people could use to keep up their well-being? And I know you've mentioned some really wonderful things already, but is there anything more that you would add to that?
Well, it's different from what I usually say. So what I said at the beginning is my best guess about the relationship of positive psychology to infectious illness is the P in PERMA. I think having fun, laughing, smiling, neck down joy, puppies, good food, sex, making love, all the stuff that makes you happy right now is what you should be doing as much as you can in isolation. When this passes toward the end of this, then we want to go to optimism, hope, and meaning, and the disputing of negative thoughts and the like. So, but right now I'm pushing fun and pushing positive affectivity. And then when we want to get back to work and we want to get the world going again, then we want to be working on hope and optimism. That's my best guess for now. Could be wrong. By the way, I should tell you that we're testing this. So I just found out this morning that we've got the entire British civil service, 500,000 people who have been measured with PERMA starting 2 years ago. And what I'm trying to do is set up a collaboration in which we also measure who gets infected, who dies, and how severe the infection is, and then who gets back to work, low absenteeism and the like. So the hypothesis is, and this is just a hypothesis and the best guess we have, is that infection rate will be moderated by positive affectivity and happiness during this period, and that getting back to work will be moderated by optimism and hope. So this is for those of us who do research in positive psychology. This is a chance to find out, and it's not just academic. That there's good reason to believe that this virus is going to come in waves. So whatever we learn in the first wave may help us in the second wave as well.
Thank you so much, Angie. The next person who's going to be asking a question is Eleanor Chin. So she is coming up right now. There she is. We are getting her unmuted.
Can you be visible, Eleanor? Be so good to see you again.
Invisible.
Well, I can see your name. That makes me happy, but it'd be even better to see your face.
Okay, I'll start my video. There we go.
Good. Thank you, Eleanor. I can do lip reading, actually. So lift your chin up a bit so I can see your lips as well.
Okay, I'll just,
Good to see you, Eleanor.
good to see you, Marty. It's been a long time, but you look exactly the same.
Keep your lips up so I can read.
Okay, how about that?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay. So you sent around a paper recently by Roser and Nagdi about individual optimism and social pessimism.
Mhm.
And what I took away from it, I'm glad I read it, because what I took away from it was that the factor of control, the perception of control, plays a big role in our sense of optimism, individual optimism versus social pessimism. The further away the cause is, the less we feel we have control, therefore. And it seems like this pandemic is a very good example of the possibility for a lot of social pessimism. I'm wondering, what can you speak to the relevance of that that theory and that element, and whether there are any interventions that you would suggest about this feeling of no control? I mean, how can you control a pandemic, right?
Yeah, you're really leaping ahead creatively here, Eleanor. So let me just go back to the beginning. So what Max Roser and Steve Pinker and Factfulness have argued is that human progress is working in the world. But if you look at people's estimates of how things are going in their own life versus how things are going in the world, there is this very big optimism gap. So in general, people believe that their own life is going well, things are going well in their family, much more than they believe that the world is going well. So they're optimistic about their family and their own life and their future, and they're pessimistic about the world. Now, Eleanor has just put forward a new hypothesis about that, and that is, with yourself and your family, you have agency, you have control. And to the extent you have control, that brings optimism. Things out in the world we don't have much control over. So Eleanor is then asking, well, this pandemic thing is something we don't have much control over. It's out there in the world. And perhaps the sense of pessimism and catastrophizing we're doing has to do with the optimism gap. So I think what Eleanor is implying here, to the extent we exert agency here, we isolate, we do positive interventions with friends and family, we do things that involve self-efficacy, that's going to be helpful to reducing the optimism gap. So I like the idea. It's new, Eleanor, and just as you were back when you were a Mapster student, you are really creative.
One of my top strengths, Marty. But thank you. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about control, and that really helps add to the thinking.
Yeah, the book I'm working on now is called Agency, the biography of the self across history. So essentially, I've been working on the notion of agency from hunter-gatherers to now, and on the hypothesis that when you see times of human stagnation, that's times when people believe in low agency, low self-efficacy. And when you see human progress, those are the times that people philosophically and religiously and individually believe in high self-efficacy. So I'm very much with you on this, Eleanor.
Oh, I can't wait to read it, Marty.
It's going slowly. And I sent it to Amanda, my daughter, who's since I'm doing history, a professional historian, and she read it and she wrote back to me and said, you know, Dad, you are really hopelessly ignorant here. This has insurmountable difficulties. You just haven't thought seriously, as historians have, about agency. So I'm giving you an assignment. And I said, oh my God, what's the assignment? said, well, I want you to read the entire 9-volume series called The History of the World from Cambridge University Press. So Mandy and I ordered 2 copies of this. It's 10,000 pages, and we've been reading 1 chapter a night. So we've made our way through the discovery of agriculture over the last 3 months. So it's going very slowly.
No better time to read it, though.
Yeah. So I sent this back to Amanda, and she says it's your thesis is still insurmountable. No, who knows?
Spoken like a daughter. Thank you, Marty.
Just one piece of housekeeping, which is that will be, you can ask a question in the Q&A or in the section, that's the Q&A section. And when you do, we will promote you to panelist as we just did with Eleanor. Marty loves seeing and hearing you all. So ask your questions, and then Sharon will be moving you over there. You can see that Sharon Dansker is the co-host of this. So please just ask your questions and we will start promoting you. We see that somebody is just about to start. Great. This person asked to read their question. All right, so I'm going to ask you a question about this agency first, and then a follow-up question about the groups that you mentioned, people doing happiness and merriment in groups. Here is the question that somebody is asking. One moment. It is that this person wants to start an agency, control, and positive interaction at her intervention or interaction. Sorry about that. One second, Marty. Let me give you the real question. It's that this person wants to start all of these different kinds of groups at their university. Are there any other people or groups that this person could hook up with? So anything about agency or control or positive, I don't know if that's supposed to say interaction or intervention. And they asked to read this question.
I don't know the answer to that, but on Saturday, when we had our meeting of 188 Mapsters, there seemed to be a whole lot of different Mapsters who were doing something like this, but we haven't really formed a repository of who's doing what and who to join up with. So I think this is a good thing for Sharon and Senia and Andrew Soren to do, is to create a repository about who's doing what. For instance, we know Amanda Moffa and Elaine O'Brien are both doing Neck Down Joy. And so who's doing agency? Who's doing self-efficacy? Who's got interventions here? So it'd be very good to create a repository here.
Even more so, who's doing education? Who's doing work from home? Because we have Mapsters focused on that as well.
Yeah, who's doing positive education from home?
Exactly.
So that's another one. So you might want to create the categories of this. So in the same way that when I get people asking for referrals, I pass them on to Senia to say, well, who's doing positive psychology with geriatrics? And Senia sends me back a bunch of names that we need a, there are now 500 Mapsters, and we need a somehow by a repository of what they're doing within the crisis.
By category for the crisis.
Yeah.
Sharon and I are on it, and IPA is on it too, Sharon tells me.
Good.
We are now promoting to panelists. We are promoting the person who asked that question, and that is Lisa. So she will be speaking to you in just one moment. It is Lisa, one moment. It is Lisa Gray Shelberg. And so we've just promoted her to panelist. And she will be saying something to you in a minute. Lisa, are you there? If you are not there yet, you're not there yet. So we're still promoting you to panelist. There you are. We're delighted to have you here as a panelist. And would you please turn your video on? Okay, while Lisa is turning her video on, another question for you, Marty. You mentioned doing things in groups. You said we should be merry, we should be happy, and we should do this in groups. What do you mean? Do you mean getting together and doing ACR? Do you mean getting together and focusing on how we can use our strengths? What did you mean by doing this more in groups?
Well, I'm not sure I've got a lot of examples of this, but I was very taken by two of the Mapsters who are doing dancing, in which you and I, if we had music now, and I'm not much of a dancer, and I get embarrassed if I do it in person, but if you and I, Senia, decided to dance, we could both do it and I wouldn't be embarrassed. And dancing is something, singing. So I guess I know how we can put in perspective together, signature strengths together and the like, but I think this new visual isolating environment gives room for us to be creative about the things we can do that bring happiness together in virtual space.
I cannot just let that go. It's 12:32 and we are all going to dance in our chairs. I'm turning on a popular song called Level Up. It's a hip hop song. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 10 seconds of it. Thank you. And would you please put into the comments how that made you feel and what happened to your level of happiness and merriment? Marty, we cannot talk about dancing and not dance.
yeah, just like our energy breaks. I mean, it makes you feel good, gives you energy, and it distracts you from catastrophic thoughts.
These people are writing to us, but people are saying, I needed that, amazing. I love that song. So awesome. All right, we're getting this rolling that we should do this every time.
Maybe our next meeting, we should start with like a minute or two of dancing to some piece of music we really like.
I think we have already developed 2 improvements on this. 1, doing it by meeting format so we can see everybody in gallery view.
Yeah.
And 2, starting with dance.
Yeah.
All right.
And getting out of our chairs to do it.
Yes, Marty, I've known you for 15 years. I am so glad to be seeing and hearing this. As opposed to somebody asks you to dance and you say, I only do above the neck story.
Yeah, but it's much less embarrassing to do it this way, to do it virtually.
With all of us. Hello, welcome, Lisa. Please go ahead.
I remember Chris Peterson always used to leave the room when we had an energy break. He didn't want to be embarrassed by it.
Okay, but on the other hand, Chris Peterson always used to put up photos of puppies and babies because he wanted that aspect of positive emotion.
Chris was very embarrassed by his body.
Yeah.
He would take showers in the dark. And there are a lot of men like that, and I think probably women too.
Body positive psychology coming up during Corona.
The virtual part may help here.
Yeah, maybe actually. You can opt whether you're visible when you're dancing or whether you're off camera. Yeah. You can opt that in. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
How do I signal that I'd like to join in?
Please, Lisa.
Hi,
We
Lisa.
see you and we hear
Hi.
you.
To everyone. I can't see you on my screen. I'm so bad at this, I don't even know how to make the screen take over my whole monitor.
We can see you, and your hand gestures are really good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay. Well, one thing I wanted to say about Chris Peterson, and this is pretty off topic, but is anyone planning to revise his book? It's still the most wonderful book that I know of to introduce positive psychology to my students. But it would be so nice to have it revised.
Yeah, I think there's a legal problem about it. So Chris didn't have a will, and his twin brother became the manager of the estate, and the book is in his estate, and it's all tied up legally, but it is the best book I know on positive psychology, made me laugh and cry, and it really needs revision now. And last I heard, this was 5 years ago, was that the estate was a mess.
Oh, that's so too bad.
So the best way for someone who wants to do it would be to try to contact Chris's twin brother and work out some agreement for the estate. I mean, it's in everyone's interest to revive.
It is. It definitely is. Well, I want to go back and say that in my question, it was positive interventions that I was talking about. At my university, California State University, Dominguez Hills, when I was going through my email, I found a positive psychology and COVID-19 booklet. And so I put it on I gave it to all of my students on Blackboard. And then I thought, gee, my colleagues might want to do this too, and they might find it useful themselves. And then since then, I just now put on a COVID-19 strategies to survive and thrive. And I'm getting really good feedback that, I mean, nobody's getting these kinds of things. And so that's why I wanted to go to doing interventions. Maybe I could set up Zoom interventions.
Yep.
I mean, I could always do it myself, but maybe I just thought of this, maybe I could do it with psychological counseling, or I could find some other avenue. But I think I love positive psychology, and I want to share it.
I think Lisa, I think it's perfectly legitimate to form virtual groups, to do positive introductions, to do put it in perspective, to do 3 blessings, to do signature strengths, to do active constructive. These are things that help people. They raise positivity, and these can be done in virtual groups. So by all means, get your friends or your clients and do a virtual positive exercise.
Yeah. No clients. My doctorate's in general experimental psychology, but my students love Chris's the exercises in Chris's book. We don't have a positive psychology course, so I pick it as my topic in senior seminar.
Thank you.
I'd love to get involved in positive psychology research, but I probably, I'd have to link up with people.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very well.
We're about to invite Elaine as a panelist. And as we do, Marty, you know, you're talking about positive body exercise. I am wondering how you make that connection. So you've said from the beginning of the call, we need to be happy, we need to be merry. And in order to do it, we need to do it below the neck. Why that connection?
Well, I think a fair amount of, maybe the majority of joy comes from below the neck. And positive psychology has mostly been above the neck stuff. But we have a whole bunch of below the neck positive psychology people. And to the extent what we want is joy in the moment, which I think it can't do any harm. It will certainly make our next few weeks better. And there is a little bit of reason to believe it fights infection. So we want, you know, Elaine O'Brien, Amanda Moffa, and this group to give us a textbook or a list of things that we should be doing below the neck. And we want to be doing these things ourselves. And we want to, as Lisa was asking, to form virtual groups to do them. No harm can be done by this, and some good maybe.
Yeah. We welcome Elaine O'Brien, a very body positive psychology person. Elaine, welcome.
Hi, Marty. Hi, Senia. My heart's
So
a little
good to see you,
broken.
Elaine.
Love you guys, and thank you for hosting. So moments before I got on the call, I learned my mom has been tested positive for COVID-19. So I'm wondering about the possibility of realistic positivity, right? For in this particular moment, I'm not feeling so merry, you know, and I think that my work around the body and movement for a long time, 40 years, has really given me a positive inoculation, because both Sean and I did have symptoms for about a week, and I'm feeling, you know, strong and a little fever still, but still feel like I can lift myself up because of that positive movement, which I call meaning in motion, right? To be able to use our healthy bodies to help ourselves and other people in the world. But to feel merry, Marty, right now, it's not feeling merry, you know, just because it's so new. How do I sort that out?
I think we're living at a time of tragedy, and that denial is not going to do us any good at all. And I don't have good advice beyond what psychologists have told us forever about living with tragedy. I'm so sorry to hear about your mom, Elaine. So I don't want to encourage false optimism and the like. So all of us will be in the next few months suffering tragedies and difficulties. And I don't think positive psychology gives us a solution and an end run around those things. This is the human condition. I'm sorry, Elaine, to not be able to offer anything more than you already know.
Well, you being there is a great bonus for me, and I know for so many of us. And again, the PERMA model, I think, is something, you know, that around, you know, I don't like the neck down term, but like it, because it is a full system, but I understand. And I think the dancing and the moving, again, with meaning, and with my practice, I try and have PERMA as the framework around the physical activity part of this. And it really lifts people up, because it's not just looking good in your bikini, but on the other part of this is, as an example, I work with a lot of seniors, and one of my seniors recently told me when her husband took sick that her doing strength training gave her the ability to move her husband, to keep him home, to take care of him and serve him and love him really well. So thanks for the PERMA model and for being there. And again, I think when you think about the possibility of realistic positivity, because I think positivity is so important. I loved your call on Saturday, but sometimes it's just like you said, when tragedy occurs, you have to kind of just like go through that, I guess. So
and for your own life, Elaine, now you and Amanda, I think, are the natural leaders of the neck down joy people. So while this is a time of tragedy for you, it's also a time of meaning and leadership. So don't let go of your leadership here.
Okay, will do. Thank you so much. Thank you both.
Elaine,
and lots of love, guys.
We're all, you are getting so many comments to the panelists about virtual hugs to your mom, and we're praying to your mom, and I want to add that as well. So thinking about you and your mom so much, Elaine.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
Wishing you all the best. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
being here. Marty, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And as I do, we're getting our next panelist, who is Rebecca Lempersky. I want to ask you about, you are a master bridge player. What is a lesson from bridge that you have brought into your life outside of bridge?
Well, particularly for this time, in bridge, you play the hand you're given. You don't play the hand that you wanted to have. So we've been given the pandemic. This is our hand now, and we have to play it. Now, we have a lot of skills, MAPPsters in positive psychology, for playing a hand like this. So this is what we've got. Let's use these skills. Bridge, by the way, is a mercilessly realistic game. So it's entirely about appreciating the reality you have and using your skills to cope with the reality that you've been dealt. One of the sayings in bridge is that God gives everyone the same number of aces and kings in a lifetime. It's what you do with them that matters.
We welcome Rebecca to ask a question. Rebecca, may I ask you to tilt your screen just a little bit so we can see your mouth as well? Thank you. You actually just did it. A little bit more so we can see you speaking. Thank you so much. Please go ahead. We don't hear you yet. Please go ahead. Could you say something?
I think you're muted still, Rebecca.
Rebecca?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. Hi, Marty.
Hi,
and prayers
Rebecca.
to Elaine's mom. I'm so sorry to hear about that. My question was around, I have a lot of coworkers who live alone, and so they're now working from home alone, and we're going on 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you know what you think that they could do when they don't have that physical connection with anybody in their physical space.
Yeah, I've been wondering about that, and there are a lot of taboos here we have to think about. So lovers are separated, couples are separated. So I've been wondering about online sexuality between couples, about online transmission of love, this question of dancing together. So these are things I'd never thought about before. So again, I'm asking our neck down joy people to tell us something about, I'd like to know a list of things we can do if we're isolated and solitary, that are social relationships, loving, joyful, sexual, and the like. So this is a big area of ignorance, and this is a time at which we should develop these interventions. One thing you can do, Rebecca, with your isolated people is these exercises, like put it in perspective, positive introduction. So I just taught a undergraduate class of 20 undergraduates, and it began by everyone sending I had them read the Nikki story, and then I had everyone send in a long positive introduction. So I think we can, Rebecca, you can do as a manager the traditional positive interventions in groups and individually. And I think that's probably especially good for people who are forced into solitary. We're not made for solitary confinement.
Right, right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. The next person to be up will be James Katzenstein. And as he is coming up, I'll ask you just a short question. Marty, what is the first thing you're going to do once the quarantining is over?
I'm up to 7,000. How many steps have I done today? 7,716. So there are two things I need to do. I need to take Rollo for a mile walk, and then I need to I've got about 1,000 dahlias and xanthodeschia and canna sitting in my greenhouse. So I've been planting about 50 a day. So I'll take Rollo for a walk, and then I'll plant 50 dahlias. And then at 5 o'clock, I've got a international bridge game for 2 hours. So that's what I'm going to do for the next 3 hours or so.
You're doing physical. You're doing what you're telling us.
Definitely.
You're doing physical.
Yeah, definitely doing physical.
And what about after the quarantining is over? What do you most look forward to doing as the first thing then?
Well, I actually don't know. So at age 77, but in fine physical health, I'm a vulnerable population. So I'm just not sure about how I'm going to, how reticent I'm going to be to go out and interact with people. So I suspect I'm going to be inclined to keep myself in isolation as best I can until there's a vaccine. But there is I have 7 children, and they visit. 4 of them are here now. 2 of them are coming for Passover and for the weekend. And they have not tested positive. So but the question is, 6 months from now, how will I interact with my young children who have been out in the world doing things? So will Mandy and I wait for a vaccine, or will we just give in and let ourselves be exposed. So I don't know the answer to that. And I don't, hello, Rolo, and I'm going to take you for a walk soon. So I don't know about the exit strategy. Yeah. And from the very beginning, I've wondered about the exit strategy for distancing.
Yeah, no, that's wise. Here is James. James, I'm going to make your video visible. And would you please come and ask your question? We have about 9 minutes left, so any questions that you have, please go ahead and enter them into the chat so we can make you visible to Marty. We'll probably have time for maybe 2 or 3 more. Here we go. Hello, James, please go ahead.
Hi, how are you?
Hello, James.
Do I have...
I can see you. You have video and audio.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. This, for me, has been an interesting and difficult process. I teach, I have 4 courses, and I teach management. And I understand the relationship between people facilitated by technology. And I understand that it's different. But what I don't understand is how does one bridge technology in a way that doesn't just deliver material, but deliver emotion and deliver compassion and deliver empathy?
Yeah. It's such a good question. It's been very much on my mind for a long time now, because I'm hard of hearing, and I've had to do a lot of stuff without face-to-face interaction. And so more and more, this is what's happening now is a boon for the hard of hearing, for those of us who have captions to do. But James is asking about not the hard of hearing, but the world in general. And when I go back and think about my history of teaching, James, I think when we're students and teachers, that love is a very important part of teaching. That are in the broad sense of eros, not the narrow sense, that students fall in love with us and they imprint on the things that we love and the like. So I just recently gave a retirement speech for Sue Meinica, who was one of my very first students, and she essentially imprinted on me. And I think one of the problems about technology, about just having the master lecturer give a lecture on something, is that students don't fall in love and they don't imprint. And so I've very much been wondering about how the new technology robs us of the imprinting that occurs in face-to-face teaching. Now, one of the things that's happening now is that we're asking this question, and I'm learning about the importance in this meeting of seeing you face to face. And I don't have the captions in real time there, but the lip reading comes through. So I'm learning, for me, what kind of empathy and compassion in a virtual environment works best for me as a teacher. I don't have an answer to your question, but I think the world is being forced in a compressed time to ask this question.
The concern that I have is that people in academia and people in the teaching component of academia will address the problem by ignoring it.
Well, I think we're involved in a worldwide academic experiment now in which people can't ignore it, because all we have is the virtual. And so how can we maximize the kind of teaching in which imprinting, love, compassion occurs virtually. So we've been forced to find, all of us are forced to find this out now. There may not be a good answer, but there may be.
I'm sure there is a good answer. I just don't think we've gotten there yet. And one of the good things about this situation may be that it forces that.
Yes, it's like a war in which technology is pressed, greatly compressed. And so this distance technology, which many of us have seen as alienating and depressing, is now forced to become pro-social and positive. And what will survive, what survived in the old technology was the best shoot 'em up games and pornography. What will survive in this, now in this, will be much more pro-social.
We have a final question coming up. Thank you so much, James. We have a final question coming up, a final content question, and then we'll just give you one last word after this final content question. We had a couple in queue. So Marty, there's a demand of nearly 100 people that would like to see you dance virtually again. So maybe we can do this again sometime. But
yes, so next time we do it, you and I will lead off and dance.
And dance with Elaine, with Amanda, with Amelia, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Sharon is going to ask a question that's, she's going to come on video in a moment, that's about Easter and Passover coming up. People are going to be getting together for Easter and for Passover virtually. And so here is Sharon's question.
So this is the first time we're going to be having a huge virtual Seder. And I would love to know if there's one particular positive intervention that you would recommend we incorporate into our Seder this year.
I don't have an answer for that. And in fact, I've been thinking, so every Easter, we both do Seder, but we do an egg hunt. And all the kids, and Mandy paints hundreds of eggs, and we scatter them around the property. And now all of the kids are going to be here, but we're not going to have an egg hunt. So I don't have an answer to that. Do you have something in mind, Sharon, about what we can do on Passover or Easter virtually?
Well, I would say it hasn't been lost on most people that it is a plague that we're dealing with. Interesting timing. I guess the thing that comes to mind for me is some kind of expression of gratitude.
Next year in Jerusalem.
Certainly dancing, right, Marty? People can dance at their virtual Seders and their virtual Easter hugs. I mean, Easter egg hunts. You just showed us that. Yeah. People are saying
Next year dancing in Jerusalem.
People are posting comments about the same comment, like paste Easter egg signs on people's windows with positive affirmations. Our area in the Bay Area was in the news because somebody sent around this email with chalk signs or chalk drawings, so people can go on walks and everybody's drawing nice things for them to see as they're going on walks. Mm-hmm. But that's not virtual. I don't know virtual. We have our final last question for you. Marty, if people remember only one thing from this call, what is that one thing that they should take away?
Maximize joy during this time of isolation.
Thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure, and we can tell from all the people who are posting in the comments, they love it. It was awesome. It was wonderful. Thank you. You're getting a lot of virtual hugs.
For me too. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us, everyone. See you on another one of these Strategies to Thrive. Thank you. Thank you.